In this video, I'm going to talk about free time. Do you have any hobbies or interests? I'm glad you've asked me about this because there are a number of things that I do in my spare time. Firstly, I enjoy doing sport. I take part in various different activities such as football and going to the gym. I particularly enjoy playing football because I get the opportunity to hang out with my mates and play in a team. I love the feeling of being part of a team and all working together towards the same goal of winning the match. Working out is a completely different activity because it is quite a solitary activity. But what I love most about it is the opportunity to spend time on my own. Secondly, I'm a big fan of going to the movies. This gives me a chance to catch up with friends and see the latest films as well. Finally, I'm keen on visiting new places. Every month I try to have a mini break and visit somewhere new. Now this is quite a long answer to this question. You probably wouldn't say quite as much in part 1 if you were asked this question. But I've given quite a long answer to get lots of vocabulary, so you might remember some of it to use in your IELTS test. I'm glad you've asked me about this. Instead of going straight into a list of your hobbies, it's a useful phrase to start your answer, and it could be used for other questions as well. What's your favourite film? I'm glad you've asked me about this because I absolutely love films, for example. Spare time. Instead of repeating the words hobbies and interest, use synonyms to get a high grade in lexical resource. Firstly, remember to use the discourse markers. These are signposts in your speaking and writing because they make it easier for the IELTS examiner to follow what you're saying. I enjoy doing. A common error that IELTS candidates make is with two verb phrases. With the verb to enjoy, we follow it with an ing verb. I enjoy going. I enjoy having. Various. It's not really required here, but it's showing that you have a good knowledge of vocabulary. I particularly enjoy. IELTS candidates tend to use I like, I really like too much, and so if you have lots of phrases that you can use instead of saying I like, this will impress the IELTS examiner. To hang out with is a very informal phrasal verb, but it would impress the IELTS examiner in speaking, and it means to spend time with. Again, mates, this is an informal way of saying friends. It wouldn't be acceptable for IELTS writing, but it would impress the IELTS examiner in IELTS speaking. Working out. This means doing exercise in order to improve the strength or condition of your body. Solitary. This is something that's done alone, a solitary activity. Secondly, so here is another discourse marker and it's giving your answer some organisation, some structure. I'm a big fan of. This is another way of saying I like. To catch up with. This is quite informal, but it's great for IELTS speaking, and it means to meet with someone after a period of time and find out what they've been doing, to find out all their news. The latest films. These are films that are on at the cinema at the moment and would also be useful for the film topic. Finally, to let the IELTS examiner know that you're coming to the end of what you're going to say, using this discourse marker will indicate that it's the last point you're going to make. I'm keen on. This is another way of saying I like. A mini break. This means a short holiday, especially one lasting only 2 or 3 days, so a mini break to Paris. So you go to Paris for the weekend. How do you usually spend your free time? When I was living in my home country, I used to spend a lot of my free time studying because the school system is very different. We used to have to go to classes on Saturdays, so that only left Sundays, which were filled with homework and spending some time with my parents and siblings. In the UK, however, I tend to have more free time, and so I get the opportunity to do much more, such as socialising with friends, exploring new places, and chilling out. When I was living in my home country, I used to. This is a fantastic phrase to get some more complex grammar in your answer. When I was living in my home country, I used to. So we've got the past continuous and used to. Obviously, you can only use this phrase if you are living in a different country. But if you're not living in a different country, you could change it to something like, when I was studying in high school, I used to. Again, using used to is a great way to improve your grammar grade instead of just using the past simple. Were filled with. The passive is very useful if you want a high grade in grammar. Siblings, this just means brothers and sisters, but it's a more complex way of saying it. However, here we're showing contrast. I tend to. Tend to plus infinitive, tend to have, tend to do, is commonly used by native speakers of English, and it will impress the IELTS examiner. Although it's a verb, it suggests that something usually or always happens. So I tend to go to bed at 11 o'clock. It means I usually go to bed at 11 o'clock. Socialising. This means mixing socially with others. Chilling out. This is quite an informal phrasal verb, but it's great for IELTS speaking, and it means to relax, to chill out, to relax. Are there any hobbies that you would like to have in the future? Absolutely. There are a multitude of things that I love to do, but time and money prevent me from doing them at the moment. Firstly, I'd love to learn how to play the piano. I'm not particularly musical, but would love to learn how to play an instrument. Secondly, I'd like to learn how to speak Italian. I can get by in the language, but I'd like to immerse myself in it and become fluent. And finally, I'd like to learn how to cook. I'm a real foodie, but I'm not a proficient cook, so when I have more time, I'll learn how to make bread and pastries. Instead of just saying yes or no, start your answer with absolutely, meaning yes, or absolutely not, meaning no. A multitude of. Another way of saying a number of. Prevent me from doing means stop me doing something. Again, look at the discourse markers being used here. Firstly. Secondly. Finally. Think of your answers like mini essays. So give them some structure, give them some organisation. Instead of using very, you could use particularly. I'm not particularly musical. Musical means skilled in music. To get buy-in means you're able to live or deal with a situation. You have just enough of something you need. To immerse yourself in means to become completely involved in something. Fluent. When a person is fluent, they can speak a language easily, well and quickly. A real foodie. This is quite an informal expression, but it's a great expression for IELTS speaking, whether talking about food or here talking about your hobbies. And it means a person who loves food and is very interested in food. Proficient means skilled and experienced. Do you think hobbies should be relaxing or should they be exciting? That's an interesting question I've never really considered before. I guess a combination of both. You need relaxing hobbies to help you to recharge your batteries after the stress of study or work. However, exciting hobbies are important too because you need to challenge and push yourself, otherwise life can become dull and samey. It's good to have some fillers to use in the IELTS speaking test. These are phrases that you can use to give yourself some thinking time. That's an interesting question I've never really considered before. If you learn this and use it when answering a question, it gives you time to think about what you're going to say next. I guess this is quite informal, but it's great for IELTS speaking, and it's much better than repeatedly saying, I think, I think, I think. A combination of both, just a bit more advanced than saying both. To recharge your batteries, this is a great expression. It's an idiomatic expression, and it means to rest and relax for a period of time so that you feel energetic again. Dull. This means boring. And finally, samey. This is an informal word, but it's great for IELTS speaking, and it means it's not interesting because of being very similar. So, music is very samey nowadays. It means it all sounds the same. Okay, that's the end of this video on free time. To check that you've learnt the vocabulary in this unit, please make sure that you do the vocabulary quiz following this video. Thanks for watching.